All right, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to Belfast Central Library. So before we get started, I'd just like to run through some housekeeping, if that's okay. So we don't have a fire drill scheduled today. So if the alarm does sound, we will need to evacuate. So I will be at the back of the room. So please follow me. I'll be the first one out. I'll be the quickest one out. I have to keep up. And I'll guide you to our assembly point right across the street from the library. Toilets are located on the ground floor and gents' toilets on the second floor. And also, if I could please ask that your phones and devices are set to silent or vibrate. Nobody wants to be that person. All right. So today's event is being live streamed, and you'll be able to view later on the Libraries NI YouTube channel at a later date. So if you did have friends that couldn't make it today, please ask them to keep an eye out for that. So this event kicks off Book Week 2025. A partnership between BBC NI and Libraries NI, celebrating all things books, reading and libraries. This year is extra special. It's our 10-year anniversary, or birthday, whichever way you want to look at it. It's a celebration nonetheless. So for a decade, Book Week NI has been uniting communities, schools, families and workplaces across Northern Ireland in a shared celebration of the joy and importance of reading. It has grown into one of Northern Ireland's key cultural events, inspiring thousands of people to pick up a book, discover new authors, and share the magic of reading. As you can imagine, we have a fully packed programme of events in libraries across Northern Ireland, including Joe Spain in Antrim, Jan Carson in Banbridge, Ellie Griffiths in Carrickfergus, and also Glenn Patterson here in conversation with Eamon Malley, which will also be live streamed. Libraries and I will also be hosting the Great Big Reading Group, featuring Evie Wood's book, The Lost Bookshop, on Wednesday at 11 a.m. in Grand Central Station here in Belfast. So if you're in a book group, or you just love books, please do go along and join the conversation. We rely on your feedback to help us to continue to offer and improve these events. So on the back of the seats in front of you, you'll see a QR code, or we also have some printed off copies as well, some written evaluations. So if you could please take a few seconds before you leave today to complete that, we would very much appreciate it. Now, however, in the very safe hands of BBC NI's journalist and presenter, Richard O'Reilly, we are delighted to welcome author Garrett Carr, whose latest title is The Boy from the Sea, and welcome back Wendy Erskine, who since seeing us last has released The Benefactors. Both titles continue to gather critical acclaim, and both have been named among the Observer's best debuts of 2025. So you're in for a real treat today. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and hello everyone. Just so you know, we will be reading those little comment cards on your way out as well, just to make sure you're saying nice things about us ahead of all that. Look, great for you all to come out, great to see a good turnout as well. I love doing these things. I love Book Week. I love this partnership that the BBC does with the libraries, because it gives us a chance to actually talk to real writers who've actually got into the craft, and it's sort of pick through your brains a little bit. So that's what we're going to do maybe for the next hour. Leave about maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the end for you guys to ask much better questions than I will as well. So we'll hold fire for that one. But I think the first thing would be great for us to do, and this is going to be a bit of a casual chat between the three of us. Everyone's here to hear of you two more than me. But I'd like to get a bit of a biography of both of you, find out maybe a bit about where you've come from. Wendy, we'll start with you, of course. Just even a little bit about yourself, maybe something we don't know about you as well.
Okay, well, I suppose one of the things you might not know about me is that I'm in this library all of the time, and I quite often work just right down the back there. I love it. I'm a library obsessive. I've always found libraries really quite exciting places, and remember the first library that we would have been taken to was one in Glengormley, which was near Crazy Prices, if you can remember when Crazy Prices used to exist, and it was brilliant. I used to go and watch, there was like a donut machine in Crazy Prices, so you could watch the donuts, being dipped into the hot fat and then coming out, and then we'd go to the library, and that was like a quality trip. I work as a secondary school teacher in Strathern School in Belfast, and I also write then, in my own time. And so that is really, I don't know if that's anything people didn't already know, but that's a little bit about me. Do you want to know anything else? Are there any other?
Well, we have another 55 minutes, so we'll get
Right.
it. We'll get into you a second. Garrett, maybe just seeing from yourself, just a little bit of maybe where you come from, what's brought you to our little chat now.
Well, I don't think does anybody know anything about me, so it's all new. No, I don't have anything particularly exciting. But my name's Garrett Carr. I'm from Killybegs, County Donegal, which you may not know is the setting of The Boy from the Sea. So I just chose to set it in my own hometown. And but I have been living in Belfast since I was it's about 20 years now, and it's been good for me, really. I was out of the country for a while, and I think there's a bit of a connection with obviously Donegal and Northern Ireland, and there's a lot of to and fro there. I mean, I've lived in Dublin for a while, and you'd meet lots of people in Dublin who've never been to Donegal, Whereas I do kind of feel it's sort of part of Belfast is part of there's a kind of a connection there. So maybe that was part of the reason. And because I came here pretty randomly. I came here originally, I did an MA in art history, Ulster, University of Ulster, just up the road there, York Street. And but it was really just an excuse to try living in a new place. And I found Belfast to be really an exciting town. It was evolving a lot at the time. There was a lot of space. If you wanted to do something new, there was a lot of opportunity to do it here. And I kind of think that's still the case now. Mm-hmm. So that's how I ended up here today.
We're neighbours. We live very close to each other.
Yeah, that's right. Just around the corner.
Setting out to write, Wendy, you're a school teacher. You still do that. You've two short story collections. You've got your novel that we're going to discuss in a moment as well, The Benefactors. But was the idea of writing always something bubbling on the periphery for you? Was it always there when you started out that career in teaching?
No, not. I suppose not really. So I suppose books have always been a really big deal to me. So it's just always been an intensely pleasurable thing for me to do, to read a book. And I always knew right from I was a kid, at primary school. Like we had this one teacher actually who on a Thursday afternoon would just devote the whole afternoon to creative writing. And she would stick in some ways she was really visionary. She was way ahead of her time. She would stick up a poster of something, or maybe a painting, or a natural scene, and we would just get to write about it for an hour and a half. And if you did well the week before, she gave you a Mars bar that you would eat while you were doing your writing. And to me, it was total bliss. And even now, that's what I love. I love writing, maybe eating something nice and having a good drink, And to me, even now, that's lovely. Loads of parents complained because they said this was
Can you give a Mars bar?
No, you cannot. You cannot be giving people Mars bars now. You would have to give them a bag of fruit or whatever. And also as well, it suited me because I loved it. But for a lot of people, a big swathe of time like that wasn't structured wasn't good. They didn't enjoy it. So that got knocked on the head. But I always really liked that. And I then went and studied English Lit at Glasgow University, which I really adored. But, it's essentially an analytical course. I didn't do any creative writing at all there, but I always had a bit of a sneaking suspicion. I wonder if I could be okay at this, if I gave it a go. But then I had a sneaking suspicion I could be okay at other things as well. There's a great line in Pride and Prejudice, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, I could have been a great proficient had I ever tried, And I felt like that about a lot of things, that maybe I could have been okay, maybe I could be a very fit person if I went to the gym all the time, And then what happened was I had this one afternoon off work a week. It was like a Monday afternoon, 2015, and I noticed that Sting and Flint Dublin were doing they were doing a course, like a creative writing course for 6 months, and I thought, wonder if I should give that a go and try and get onto that. And so I did, but I hadn't been one of these people that had been writing loads of short stories in my spare time and trying to enter lots of competitions. It was purely just because I thought that would be an interesting way to spend my time on on a Monday, and it was intimidating, you know, the first night of it, when there's people talking really seriously about their fiction or their fictive worlds. It's like, oh my goodness me, this is like full on. But then, you know, then a couple of weeks I realised I actually really like this, and I'm prepared to work quite hard on it. And so that was how it was for me. So I had no master plan, like no big, you know, world domination plan in terms of short stories. It all just
The incentive of a Mars bar here and there.
yeah, Mars bar here and there, and I suppose just like a love of reading, really, of other people's stuff, you know.
Yeah, Garrett, I mean, you've worn several hats. You've map maker, young adult fiction. You've got your adult fiction. I set in your hometown of Killybegs. I mean, similar point for you. Has it always been something that was there, or maybe is it something you stumbled upon and just kind of fell into?
I guess that's interesting. I suppose I wrote a lot when I was a kid. But I'm dyslexic. My spelling's really bad. My handwriting's really bad. I had a test there not that long ago, because I kind of knew I was, because I'd read enough about it, but I had never had an official diagnosis, so I went and had a diagnosis. And it was a big, elaborate test. You need to do all sorts of things for you to arrange blocks, colored blocks and all this. And my spelling is bottom 5%. Even after writing 5 books, you know, but it's actually much improved. But it's still bottom 5%. So basically, I spell like a 7-year-old, or lower even. So obviously this inhibited me somewhat when I was a kid, and it was all a bit of a struggle. And my handwriting as well. I don't know if this is related, but my handwriting is it's a bit of a mess too. So, but that did, yeah. Well, I guess it didn't stop me, because I kept going at it. But of course, I never showed the stuff to anybody, you know.
There's a real lesson though for anyone who has been diagnosed or has a child who's got that dyslexia diagnosis, that, you know what, these things are still open to you. It doesn't hold you back.
Well, especially now with the tools, yeah. So you get them a computer and yeah, I mean, I could do a lecture on that, because sometimes my spelling is so off, the spell check won't recognize it. It's that bad, you know. But then what you can do is you can copy the word and stick it into Google. And that, you know, it searches for corrections as well. And it actually is a bit of a better reach, I guess, because it's working with other people who are dyslexic, who are making similar misspellings, I guess. So it will find words that Word won't find. And then if it still doesn't get the word, which happens, you can start putting in other words. So if you couldn't spell, I don't know, apple or something, which I can't spell, but if you couldn't spell apple, and it was so off it couldn't recognize it, then you could put fruit, pineapple, whatever. You obviously couldn't spell pineapple, but and it would make the connections then, and it helps you reach it. So yeah, so there's all sorts of techniques and things you can. So in my day, I'm doing quite a lot of that. But still, even now, I still write by hand first.
Do you always write by hand?
Yeah, even though it's like painful.
So what about you, Wendy? Because you're in here. Do you write by hand, down pen and paper?
Mostly I don't write by hand unless I'm doing something that's non-fiction. So if I'm writing something that's like I don't know, maybe some sort of an essay, or maybe I'm writing about a film, I do that longhand, because I think it just slows me down, and I need to think about it maybe a little more. Whereas whenever I'm writing short stories or novel or fiction, I normally do it on just my computer. Yeah, it's like a laptop.
I'd be worried I wouldn't be able to read my own handwriting. I don't think I could do that. Look, we were discussing a way to ask that most trite of questions that gets asked of anyone who writes that. Where do you get your ideas? So we're going to try and avoid that and try and find a very highbrow way to ask this. And I was thinking along the lines of, you know, when the muse strikes, how do you know? But I think we should just keep it straight up. Talk us through the process, because it doesn't happen, because some might think, look, writing is something you can do, that look, you just sit down and you have a go and then the things just happen, it works. But there's also presumably a lot of graft to it as well. You've got to work at this. This is a job to you guys.
Yeah, although sitting down and having a go is probably
part of it, yeah. Maybe.
But with a bit of mission and I suppose ambition as well, really. I mean, it's quite an arrogant thing to do, isn't it? To say, you're basically saying, listen to me for 8 hours, you know. So it takes a kind of there's a kind of a gumption to it, and probably, frankly, a kind of a dissatisfaction with the other ways that you have to connect with the world. Something must have not worked out for you to start thinking writing a book's a really good idea. something that there's got to be something hasn't quite clicked. I don't know, and not always, but certainly in many cases, certainly in mine. Then, yeah, well, think about the classic advice is write what you know, and there is a lot of truth to that. And indeed, why wouldn't you want to? What have you got to offer? And then within that, there's almost it's almost like a business decision. It's like, where are the spaces? What are the stories that aren't being told or haven't been told? What have you got that's original to bring to the table? It's nearly like a business person spotting a gap in the market, you know. Like with The Boy from the Sea, there's multiple ways brought me to that novel. But one of them was simply, I've never written or read about Irish fishing families. It's not there. Like, with loads of farmers, loads of urban life from Belfast and Dublin and other places. But this whole kind of culture wasn't in any novels at all. It's kind of weirdly absent, actually.
It is.
But that's my world. It's where I'm from. It's where I grew up. My father's a fisherman. So I knew these people. And I thought, well, you know, who better? Or at least there's nobody else. So
yeah, who better to lay Killy's eggs down on print? I mean, Wendy, you come in here, you were saying you effectively sit down, because there was that photograph that was shared for the Booker Prize nominees, and it showed a photograph of each of the nominees, didn't name them who they were, and it showed where their writing space is where they work. So varied loads. Some of them looked very cozy, wonderful little classic things. Others were just a kitchen table. Was it Roald Dahl famously just wrote down in the shed in the bottom of his garden? You're in here. I mean, do you come in every day? Is it a disciplined thing that you come in at a certain point each day and think that this is my writing time, I got to start writing?
Yeah, I mean, I just agree with so much that Gareth just said there. I mean, there's something incredibly magical. You're taking something that didn't exist ever before, and you're creating something that, you're creating a world, and you're creating characters, and you're going to create people that others will respond to and feel something for. There's something magical about that. It's pretty special, but at the same time, it's also just graft. You have to get on with it. And as much as possible, I don't like to regard writing as having any sort of special category status that you need to be in a certain mood, or you need to be seized by the muse, or you need to go on a creative writing retreat or anything like that. It's just one of those things that you need to get on with when you have got the time to do it. And so I suppose I've a lot of admiration for people like Ronan Hession in Dublin there, who has also got a job as a civil servant, which is going to, you know, take up a lot of his time, or somebody like Kevin Carr, who's working secondary school teacher. So there's that you just need to get on with doing it. Just keep on trucking with it, and it's the same as anything else. Totally agree with what you're saying, Garrett, about it's. In some ways, it's an ego trip that you're saying to somebody, rather than watch that box set for 8-9 hours, I want you to read this. And so it's you're hoping for people's generosity, that they're going to give you your time. But I totally agree. It's also as well a dissatisfaction, maybe with what is already out there, that you feel, I can do this. There's a quote I use all the time, Zola, like, what is art but a corner of creation seen through a temperament? And that's all you've got to offer the world, exactly, is how you see it, your take on a particular place or particular people. And if others aren't already putting that out there, then, you know, why not you? I mean, in terms of where inspiration comes from, I kind of think that you're in dialogue with everything, every conversation you've ever heard, every song you've ever heard, every film you've ever seen, every TV program, you know, everything you've ever read, that's all going into the mix. And, you know, that whole thing, write about what you know, I also think that that's really key, because what you actually know is pretty various, you know. Whenever you think about what you know, there's all sorts of things, maybe things you've never expressed to somebody, the sort of interiority that there is as well, of things that you know and things that you know and things that you feel that you've maybe never really articulated in your real life. There's just so much, and you know, I write mainly about sort of Belfast, East Belfast, and that's me writing about what I know. But I also think it's all life is there, really. All complexity is there in just a handful of streets.
Do you, when you're writing, I think it was Stephen King said when he writes, the first person you're telling the story to is yourself. because you maybe don't know what it is to begin with either. Do you have an ideal reader in your head that you're writing this for, and are you telling yourself this story first of all?
I do have an ideal reader, but it comes quite far on down the line. So the way I normally write with, say, the short stories is that I start off with an initial first draft. I'm writing with no restrictions whatsoever. I don't know where it's going. I'm just along for the ride, and and this is so particular to the way I do it. Other people do it entirely differently. So I might write about 25,000 words for a 6,000 word short story, and I'm just trying to get to know the characters. I'm just trying to get to know who they are, and I've no idea about plot at that point at all, and I'm not thinking about a reader. I'm just trying to generate material, and the only thing I can kind of liken it to is that thing, you know, like the penny falls in the amusement arcade. You're just putting the coins in, and you're hoping at some point there's going to be some kind of combination that's going to be interesting, or is going to grab you or whatever. So much further down the line, then I start thinking about the reader, and I'm refining this first draft down and down and down, maybe 4 or 5 times or whatever, and I'm thinking about a reader then, like, I never want to be spelling things out too much for people, and I'm thinking to myself, like, is the reader going to be getting annoyed here? Are they still going to be with me at this stage? Are they still going to be trusting me on this? So I do think about the reader, but it does come later in the process than the initial first couple of drafts. What about you, Garrett?
Well, with the Boy from the Sea is a very distinct case in that you had to have, I think the reader had to be very clear from the beginning, because there's a sense, just as I mentioned earlier, you're introducing people to a culture, so therefore you are kind of a guide to the place, and therefore you are presuming that they're not from there, and so therefore you're putting them somewhere else. So there is some kind of sense of placement of where the audience is, where the narrator is, that you couldn't really have begun until you had that. Then there was another thing that fed into that, although it's just a facet of that really, was I started this because I have 2 sons, one of whom is 12 today actually, and the other one is 14, but they'd have been both under 10, I suppose, when I started this. And I wanted to tell them about where I'm from, because it's a little bit like maybe where part of them's from. But we don't spend that much time in Donegal, So, and as well as that, they don't like it very much. They just think it rains, and it takes ages to get there. And they're just like, why are we here again? It's raining. We told you it would rain. And they were right, us. But I wanted them to know about where I'm from, because I think maybe someday they might actually be interested. And right now they're not interested, but maybe in the future. So I decided to write a little memoir. And I just thought it'd be about 10,000 words about me and about my parents, but almost immediately when I started writing that, it turned into the novel almost instantly. Like it was almost in a way it was just a prompt to get the novel going, maybe. But that is still in the voice of it. Like that is still there. There's a little bit of it.
A little bit of you.
The narrator is saying, "This is how it was in my day." Have a listen to this.
Do you want to give us a bit of it? Do you want to give us a little bit of it?
Sure.
Maybe. I mean, we've got time. We do a little bit of reading here, can't we? Maybe take a bit of The Boy from the Sea.
Okay.
Take us to Donegal.
I'll take you to Donegal. Let me take you to Donegal. It takes ages and it's raining when you get there. I'm going to read this a little bit. It starts in 1973 when the Boy from the Sea arrives, or when he's abandoned. But as I mentioned, it's also the story of a marriage. I didn't mention that, excuse me. I've been speaking to a lot of people recently. So a boy is abandoned outside Killybegs and adopted by a fishing family called the Bonners, who haven't calculated how dramatic, or what dramatic effect this is going to have. For one thing, their original son Declan never accepts the new boy, and it sparks a rivalry between the two of them that really shapes their next 20 years. But it's also a story of the family and of the entire community. And so I wanted to show when Ambrose Bonner and his wife Christine meet. So we have a little look back to probably the late 60s when they meet in Killybegs. And this is kind of a funny scene to write, but this is a bit like imagining how your parents met, or imagining how my parents met. The Foresters' Hall smelled of hairspray, tea, and the fish scales under our nails. The show band were into their first set. The hall was only half full, but 4 bouncers were on duty as fights often broke out when boat crews arrived. Some daughters weren't allowed to attend dances due to these brawls, but Union no longer imposed such rules. Phyllis had taken up his objections so fully they were now her own, while his other daughter, Christine, earned money for herself and couldn't be stopped. All the same, we were surprised to see Christine arrive that night. Inside the door, she shed her long, dark coat, and the turquoise sheen of her dress was suddenly there and brash and almost shocking. Christine went to the woman's side, smiling hello to people in a determined manner. She bought a cup of tea at the urn and took up a position alone, watching the band. She was very still. Across the way, the men spoke in huddles, all hunched and wearing more or less the same suit. They looked like bank robbers as they glanced over at the woman. There was no alcohol at these dues, but some men got pints into them before arriving. Tonight, Christine ignored the men completely, not a glance. She held one arm angled away from her, and in her long fingers, the way a starlet might hold a cigarette, was the teacup in its saucer. Live music attracted some old ones and a few married couples, and they mingled as they pleased on both sides of the hall. Their presence might have been the reason Ambrose, when he walked in, misread the arrangement and walked straight over to the woman's side. He was also lured by the brightness of Christine's dress. Ambrose was wearing his winter woolly pullover, but you couldn't have told him he looked ridiculous, as he was impervious to that sort of thing. Later, they'd remember the show band was playing Strangers in the Night as he approached Christine, but it was actually Crystal Chandeliers. Ambrose didn't ask her to dance, as he wasn't one for dancing. "Hello," he said, big grin on him. You might have taken him for simple-minded. "Fine evening." "So who are you?" Christine asked him. She knew well, but she wasn't letting on. "Ambrose Bonner," he said. "Pleased to meet you." They shook hands. "I have my own boat," said Ambrose. Although done with contemporary flourishes, his courtship style was essentially what a woman might have gotten in the Stone Age. Ambrose made sure not to smile. Christine made sure not to smile. "Well for you," she said. "Or I will when she's built," he said. "There's a waiting list, but I'll have her in a year or so." By making it clear he wanted to impress her, Ambrose had handed Christine the role of being hard to impress, and therefore put her in command. She's decided to keep hold of this position. Ambrose glanced around and didn't seem to know what to do with his arms, but he was enjoying himself. Giddy with luck, he asked, "Would you take a Kit Kat?" "No, you're all right," said Christine. Her expression was neutral, but she kept her gaze on him. Ambrose was very ruddy, like he was never under a roof in his life. But get past that and he wasn't bad looking. Christine knew a lot of women would have liked to be in her flats now. The consensus said Ambrose was a good catch. It had taken a while to recognize this due to his rough demeanor and the fact that he'd taken up the caravan behind Big Jimmy's cottage, which was usually rented by drunks and drifters. Yes, he'd need domestication, but he worked hard, got on with everyone, and would soon be the youngest boat owner in town. Ambrose also had the wide capabilities of an island man. Aside from fishing, he could strip an engine, lay a brick, cut a tidy run of turf, drive a lorry, and bone a chicken. Some of his skills were heading out of style, but the range indicated confidence and a good brain. Being an outsider did him no harm either. It gave him an air of possibility. Arriving fresh and unburdened, Ambrose seemed like a man with a better-than-average chance of doing well. A woman needed a bit of hope. "Would you believe I made more than £5 out the bay today?" said Ambrose. Christine decided to test him with the truth. "Would you believe my mammy's only dead? We buried her 2 days back, and here I am at a dance." Ambrose's hesitation was minuscule, if there at all. "I believe it because I see it," he said. "I'll be given hell for it," said Christine. Ambrose considered this. "Then we better make it worth the while," he said.
Yeah, Yeah, that is when you go lift it off the shelf. I don't know what will. I mean, when you mentioned, you talked about fish scales under the nails there. And when you read back on that, and does it transport you back to your childhood home? Because it does scream I don't want to call it small Ireland, because I think that's such a patronising phrase, but you might argue even real Ireland in many ways.
Yeah. I suppose it does. I mean, that was the well that I was drawing from, really. I mean, the last book previous to this had so much research in it. It was like a non-fiction book about Ireland's border, and there's just tons of reading. And then so I thought I actually deliberately tried to steer away from that. I thought I'd write a book that I wouldn't really remember. And so I guess it's full of memories. And then the more research, I didn't know that much about fishing, so I did end up having to do some research. But yeah, it is full of memory, and I suppose I mean, it does put it back in place again. Yeah, the Forest was Hall still there. You go to dances there. I think first slow dance. Forest was Hall.
Wendy, of course, you talk about writing what you know as well. You're primarily East Belfast, where yours. I mean, the Benefactors is your first novel. You've got short story collections before that, and never like to give too much away, because we want people to go and take and read this. But some here will certainly have read it. And there's a sexual assault. There's a class difference as well within that sexual assault. But the way yours is told, it's a series of vignettes from so many different narrators.
Yeah. So essentially what we've got here at the very centre of this book, we have got an 18-year-old young woman called Misty. And there's two triangles of characters either side of her. So there's one triangle, it's her stepdad, Boogie, it's her sister, Geneva, and it's her great-granny, Nandi. And then there's another triangle of people, and they are the three mothers of the young men who sexually assault Misty. And so what I was interested in doing was having a situation where these incredibly different people were all going to be brought together. And there would be all sorts of ramifications and repercussions. And I suppose it's about all sorts of things. It's mainly to me about kindness, and it's also mainly to me about parenting. What are your responsibilities to your own children? What are your responsibilities to other people's children? And also looking as well at parents, how people that aren't biologically related to individuals can be great parents. So it's dealing with those sorts of ideas. But so there's a main narrative, but then woven into the main narrative, there's 50 first-person accounts. And what I wanted was this to feel like a kaleidoscope. That, you know the way when you've got a kaleidoscope, you've got those central elements, and you twist the drum and the elements reconfigure and it's a different pattern. Well, these first persons essentially don't necessarily advance the plot. Most of them don't. But they reconfigure the preoccupations of the novel, so you just see things slightly differently. So do you want me to read a couple of them?
Please do.
Okay. So the first one here is, these are all unnamed, so you don't know who they are, and you don't know where they live or anything about them, but they are all talking about something connected in some way to the preoccupations. And this is a woman who once had her makeup done by Misty. I know that she wanted to do all of the special effects makeup at one point, turn people into zombies and all that kind of thing, Night of the Living Dead, but Misty did my makeup for my son's graduation, and it was so beautiful. I was nervous because I've actually let myself go recently on account of a lot of things. I'd felt very down to the point where I wondered if I should continue. The right medication isn't the whole story, I know that, but I did get a really good doctor who got me sorted out a bit, and I started to feel a lot better. But even so, I was very worried about the graduation because my son's dad, my ex, Tony, and his partner were going to be there. Even though it's years since we've split up, I've never stopped loving Tony. It's embarrassing, isn't it? I mean, you're meant to move on and all of that, but I would get back together right now if I could. I know that's never going to happen, though. On the graduation day, I just wanted to look presentable. not glamorous. I don't know what Misty did. It wasn't much. It didn't take long. But I looked like a lady. So that's the first one. And then this next one, this is one that's dealing with the whole, because there's so many perspectives. One of the things that this novel is dealing with is the idea of multiple different perspectives and multiple voices and, you know, the polyphonic. And this is a commentary, I suppose, on that from somebody that doesn't like it. There's always going to be people that don't like that kind of thing, and that's okay. So here we go. For Christmas, a friend got me a series of mindfulness classes. The place was above a fried chicken takeaway. It didn't get off to a wonderful start, as far as I was concerned. We all sat in a circle while the woman ticked our names off her printout. When she came to one participant, she said that his name wasn't on the list. The guy said that his girlfriend had got it online. The mindfulness woman got quite agitated about him possibly not having paid because he wasn't on the list, which to me didn't seem terribly mindful. Then the young man said, Jesus Christ, do I look like the kind of guy who'd want to scam a mindfulness class? Most of the circle gave a little laugh at this because he didn't. Well, who would? And I watched the mindfulness woman clench her fists. So no, I was hardly sold on it. When she started on the breathing exercises, all I could smell was fried chicken. However, in the middle of the session, the woman told a story, a homily really, about a table. It was the idea that a simple table's being was predicated on the existence of a multiplicity of other elements, such as the forest where the wood grew, the rain and the sun necessary for such growth, the factory where the table was made, possibly the workers' hands, their sweat, the machines and tools made by other workers in other factories, and then the transportation and distribution that had brought the table to this spot. The shops, the shop workers who'd placed it in a box, their parents, their ancestors. Obviously, the story was to reinforce a pleasant sense of connectivity with the earth and its inhabitants, and to suggest the multiplicity of the most straightforward of things, to suggest how all is contingent. But the effect it had on me was quite negative. The simplest action, like getting a glass of water, became so mind-blowingly complex and dizzying in all of the avenues that could be pursued. The filtration, the plumbing, the ancestors of the glassmakers, the installation of the taps, the molecular structure of the water, as to be paralyzing. It was like a monster with multiplying tentacles. There can be just too many perspectives. It made me crave single source elements, single source only.
Okay, sorry, if I may ask you, Wendy, in the audiobook then, how was all that handled? I think I read something about this. Can you remind us?
Yeah, so the audiobook, what happened, Garrett, was that initially the plan was that one person would read the whole thing. And I was saying, right, if you want somebody utterly baffled by this book, go ahead and, you know, do it that way. So what happened was I read the main narrative. So I read the main story. And then what we had was any family and friends who wanted to volunteer to read any of these first persons, they signed up to do it. And also there was like an open audition, so anybody could have auditioned to do it. So we've got about 35, there's 35 different people. So
non-professional, presumably.
Non-professional. So I actually wanted people that sounded like real people. So, you know, no kind of sort of Amdram style deliveries. No, this in the Amdram world. I have seen a lot of great stuff over the years. Brilliant production, once of translations, amazing. But what I wanted was that. So we're all sorts of people doing it, and it was done in a studio in Belfast. It's the biggest audiobook that the publishers had ever done in terms of people involved. So it was great. It was really great. I loved it.
Sounds like a production nightmare. It must be a lot of fun at the same time to bring so many people in just to do that, because it's a good way of conveying. You've got two very, very different voices there to begin with, yet you're conveying that as well on the audiobook. The subject matter as well of the benefactors, and I mean, if you look at the statistics in Northern Ireland about violence against women and girls, and how much do you tap into what's happening, or does that happen organically when you start to write it?
For me, again, I can only say the way I work, but things happen pretty organically. Like, I don't think I would ever sit down with a sort of a bullet-pointed list of sort of preoccupations or ideas that I want to try and include. But these things just these things just sort of they happen really organically, I suppose I would say. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to be influenced by what's happening in the world. I mean, I'm writing in a broadly realist tradition, and if you're writing about people who exist in a specific world, then what happens in the real world is going to absolutely shape what it is you're doing. But it goes into the mix with so many other dimensions and other elements.
Who do you guys read? Who do you like to read? Because they always say writers are such voracious readers as well.
Yeah.
When you've got the time to do it.
Yeah, you know, I'm starting to feel the shortness of life creeping up. Well, it's not that bad. But I am just reading real canonical stuff, yeah. I mean, Wendy mentioned Zola there earlier. It was absolutely wonderful. I'd never read until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm going through Zola at the moment. The Brothers Karamazov I had another go at, and I've managed to get further this time. It's actually looking good. I think I might make it this time.
Well done.
So it's all that kind of, it's just, there's such a wealth in them. There's so much going on. It comes from a whole other time. I guess the writers had more time, to be honest, as well. And the readers were operating in a completely different culture as well, where they don't have so many distractions. So these things are, I mean, there's loads you could cut out of the Brothers Karamazov, frankly. But even there, you'll still find stuff, this wealth of examination in it that I find really wonderful. Henry James as well, I'm finding really superb. Love, brilliant point of view. He does something. Well, it's mostly a kind of a third person, but then James asserts himself quite often. He'll throw in an I every now and then. He sort of keeps you reminding you that he's there, this authorial voice, which is a lovely technique. He also does something I'd love to do, although I don't know if a contemporary reader would accept it, where he just refers to the main protagonist as the hero. He says, our hero. Our hero. It's lovely. What a brilliant technique, just to make sure we don't forget who the star is. Our hero. So I'm admiring that. I don't know if I can do it, but it's pretty good. Yeah, so I just find so much riches, especially in the 19th century. Yeah.
I went as far as buying the Brothers Karamazov. Completely unblemished.
It took me a few runs now.
It's
slow. It takes a while to kick off. There's this wonderful section where the devil appears to one of the brothers, and it's this massive speech she gives, and it's actually supposed to drive you crazy. It's actually supposed to do that. So it's like 40 pages of just. What I think you couldn't get away with it today, but it's a marvelous piece of writing. Absolutely brilliant.
Wendy, who's on your bookshelf?
Well, you know, I totally agree with what you're saying, Garrett, about time passing differently. I mean, I think as I get older that it's just, my idea of time has changed so profoundly. You know, it used to be like a 2.5-hour train journey or bus journey. I'd think, oh goodness, that's going to be endless. And now it just passes in an instant. Sometimes I hardly even get a book out. By the time I've stared out the window for a bit in Dublin or whatever, I go back to Chekhov all of the time. I nearly always have every time I go on holiday or on a trip, I'll have some Chekhov short story anthology in my bag, and I just think all life is there. And you know, I've just learned such a lot about, you know, how stories can be structured, and you know, how you can treat a reader, how you can end a story in a particular way with space for a reader. There's so much I've learned. A book I've absolutely adored recently is a book called Hunchback by Sao Ichikawa, Japanese writer and translation, and it's just superb. It's short. It's one of those books that's quite short. You probably read it in one sitting, and it's not a complex book, but there's a complexity to it. It's a wonderful book. I enjoyed that such a lot. So I'd recommend that to people. It's terrific.
You know, Wendy, I teach creative writing in the Seamus Heaney Centre here in Belfast, and it's kind of a long story, but basically I had to do an extra class. So I said, you guys choose what we'll read. We'll just read short stories. Normally we do novels. And then they put some up, and we voted, or the students voted. And what we're reading for tomorrow is Chekhov, the student. It's called And Your Story. Gloria Max.
Oh, really?
Isn't
that lovely? Isn't
You're
that lovely? I feel very...
Well, one student nominated it, and then the other students voted.
Oh, isn't that
so that's
lovely?
Chekhov and Erskine.
Oh, wow.
Double bill.
I am very, very, very honoured. Very honoured indeed. That's amazing.
In a couple of minutes, we're going to take maybe some questions, but a couple of, I don't want to call them quick fire, but a couple of points I'd love to maybe get your views on. We'll start with AI. I mean, we're constantly talking about artificial intelligence. I think back in the day, we maybe thought the creative arts would be something that would be kind of immune to the impact of artificial intelligence. That seems to not be the case. some authors here had their work actually taken and used to train AI against their will. I mean, there's the argument, it's like any tool. It all depends how this thing is used. But, I mean, would it concern you, even in that community, as to recognizing it's almost like a Philip K. Dick novel in itself, recognizing what's real and what's not?
Well, for me, the concern is that, see, I don't think you get many writers who just use it 100%. You probably you get very little of that. But you might get people who are just helped along with it in some way, or they're using it to bridge gaps, or some kind of shortfall. And then you see, that's really pernicious, because I think what you'd start to lose is an authenticity to it. That could be, and it's such a magic, indefinable quality. So it's very hard to recognize. It certainly can't really be proven, and you mightn't even entirely notice when it's weakened. That would be my concern. But ultimately, though, if you're not finding it, you will stop reading it. So that kind of is concerning, actually. It would just something that might just draw down the quality in a really broad spectrum sort of way, but it'd be kind of hard to catch. So that would be my concern with it. I don't see any particular advantage. I mean, most writers aren't going to, I would hope, aren't going to be using it. I can't imagine where I would be using it, because it's really hard to write a book. So you think, that'll help you then, but actually it won't, because it'll just cheapen the experience. And the whole, whatever you're getting from it, you'll lose it. As soon as you had one sentence in there, I think, I don't know, you'd lose something to it that would then, when the big struggles hit you, you won't be so invested in the thing anymore. And I don't know. It seems like a good way to not finish a project is to start
no longer just yours either anymore.
Sorry?
It's no longer just yours anymore either once you do that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're probably keeping that secret, but still you know. And yeah. I mean, it's quite easy to lose the stamina for a project anyway. But if you've kind of been using AI as well, then I think that it would be it's something that would inhibit your whole creative process and would result in, I think it would often result in abandoned projects, I suspect.
Wendy?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, and I kind of think that the pleasure in writing a book, much as it's lovely going around the country, meeting people and doing events and meeting readers, all of that's great, but so much of the pleasure is in the actual writing of it. And if you decide to sort of contract that out to AI, I think that's a great pity, because that's, for me, where the real enjoyment of writing comes, and there's a smoothness to it. There's a lack of authenticity. Also, as well, I just think, to return to that Zola thing again, that it's the corner of creation seen through a temperament, right? People are so strange. That's what makes books really great. Yeah. Is that it's a take on the world that it might be something that seems very contradictory, or it's hard to, at this stage anyway with AI, it's hard to imagine AI generating a book like that one I just talked about, Hunchback, which is about a person with severe disabilities in a special care facility who's writing adult content online. Now, it's a really interesting, complex book that I think would be impossible for AI ever to have come up with.
That's the AI question taken. Let's go on to funding for the arts in Northern Ireland. I'm going to try and find my most BBC between the hedges way of putting this out there, but I think we're often deemed to have been found wanting when it comes to funding the arts, and it's something we want to be open to more than just the super rich to go and do this sort of thing. Do you think there is help out there for those young aspirational authors and writers out there?
We're probably the last people to ask me, aren't we?
Well, I think that our funding, if you're looking at funding in relation to the Republic of Ireland, or if you're looking at funding in relation to the United Kingdom, and you're looking at funding, I think I'm right in saying, compared to Scotland, Wales and England, I think ours is, I don't think ours compares super favourably.
Much lower, yeah. I don't know the stats, but it's
I
think we're the lowest per capita.
It's the lowest, and it's certainly a difference between here and the Republic of Ireland. So that is not good. I do think as well, though, that there's so much that people can still do if you're a writer, even if you've got a full-time job. That you should not regard not having funding as that shouldn't be cancelling out your desire to write. And that's why I think it's important for people to know that people are writing while also doing other jobs. That's not an unusual thing.
Yeah, sometimes I think maybe writers are applying for these things as a mark of faith as well. They just kind of want that. It's like some kind of approval. The best one's getting published, obviously, but as you move towards that, then it's a kind of a sense that this is legitimate work to do. And it's a bit of a shame now if you're relying on the Arts Council for that. You need to look elsewhere. And it is a leap of faith, and it's nobody's going to care if you finish your book or not. Nobody's going to care. And I don't think I'd recommend looking for people to care because you're going to be disappointed. But I don't know, you might get some funding. As regards, see, the writing is a different thing. Like when you talk about funding for the arts, you can see festivals, theatres, filmmakers, things that are really happening in the economy because it requires multiple talents and budgets. Writing is different. Really, we don't cost very much, and it is the one art form you can do with very little expenditure. But time is the thing, obviously, which can be price tagged. But it's when we're thinking about arts funding, I think it's those kind of large-scale projects that require employees and equipment.
Boosting the
That's
cultural.
kind of what we're talking about. And there should be more, absolutely should be more, because it brings money back into the economy and it makes us... Michael D. Higgins in the Republic of Ireland, just finishing up his tenure as president right now, he was arts minister for quite a long time, and he did a lot to encourage film in the Republic of Ireland back in this, I guess we're talking early 80s. And at the time, there just wasn't any kind of film industry. Whereas now, anyone anywhere in the world who likes movies has seen an Irish film, or 3 or 5. And this means something. It means Ireland's joined that conversation in this global art form, and it's significant. And so that's kind of what you want. It's not some kind of bauble. It's an important thing for a place to engage with, But certainly in film requires funding and an encouraging governmental regime in order to get those things running. And so it shouldn't just be, isn't it great they make Game of Thrones here? But making Game of Thrones here doesn't matter because that's not our story. So what you really want is to bring up sort of local voices who are going to tell stories that are not just filmed, happen to be filmed in the place, but are off the place. And that will always take governmental support, at the beginning at least.
Final quick point then, I want to talk about kids' books. We're in a library, that's, our memories of libraries so much go back to when you were a child. I have 2 small boys at home, so Julia Donaldson is probably by far the most read author in our house at this point. And I'd just love to go, what your guys' earliest memories of reading, of what you were into when you were kids.
Yeah, we have Roald Dahl, of course. Roald Dahl he's up when I was a kid, and then he kind of went out of style, and he's back out again. So yeah, Roald Dahl. I wouldn't say I was a huge reader as a kid, though, really. I was sort of walking through the bogs and fishing off rocks and all that kind of scene. Earliest memory, though, if you want to know, is my sister reading to me The Rats of Nim by Richard C. Bryan, which is a brilliant book, still a brilliant book. And that's my earliest reading memories being read to by her.
Who was your favourite growing up, Wendy?
My favourite growing up was Noel Stratfield. I don't know if anybody's read anything by her, Noel Stratfield, but it was always kids that were in these kind of quite adult worlds. It was like stage schools, or it was like children that were having to work on barges, and it was nearly like a Gordon Byrne Gateway thing, because there was these quite tawdry worlds at time that these wholesome kids were trying to operate in. But one of the things I can remember earliest reading was a thing where it was like these people. There was a house that was covered in nasturtiums, and the people from a distance said that they thought, oh, there was a house on fire because it was covered in these really bright nasturtium flowers. And I can remember going to my mum and saying, what's going on there? Like, do these people genuinely? Do they think that the things on fire? Do some people think things covered in flowers are on fire? Because I'd had to ask her what even nasturtiums were, and she was like, "Oh no, that's just the sort of thing that happens in books, that the people think this sort of stuff." And I could just remember from that time on, think there's sort of a parallel way in which people, like, I wouldn't have thought about it like this because I was a kid, but it kind of the gist that there was another way in which people operated in books. It was slightly different to how they operated in real life.
Well, I think we could probably take a few questions if anyone's interested in inputting anything to the panel. No, yeah. We have one just at the front.
Question for Wendy. So many characters in this book. And I was wondering what came to you first, or who came to you first, or was it actually the assault came to you first? Where did you start?
Well, probably one of the first people I thought about was the character of Boogie. So Boogie is Misty's stepdad, I suppose you would say. And he came really early on, and I thought, I want to write about a guy like that. I want to write about a guy that, like, I don't drive, and so I'm always in taxis, and so I want to write about a taxi driver, interesting guy, and one as well that is a parent and has been a parent from a really young age. I get a bit fed up at times with the sort of intellectualization of parenthood, and he's a guy that just goes, if you can look after a puppy, you can look after a kitten, you can look after a wee baby. And so he came quite early on, and Frankie came quite early on. So I enjoyed writing about her. She's one of the mothers. So those two characters came quite near the beginning. And then the 51st persons, they all just sort of happened simultaneously. I was just taking a little notebook of them whenever I was writing the main narrative. So they were just all over the place.
Thank you. Anybody else want to throw one in?
This one's for Garrett. Oh, hello. I was just going to ask, with yours and the tense, the way you write, I know we're talking about this, I'm one of Garrett's students as well, so I'm going to ask you. We're talking about tenses and structure and everything. So you took, like, why did you decide to write the book that way? So you kind of have a lot of, it's from like the community perspective, like we, it goes like that a lot. And then you also get the other points of view of the characters. Like, why did you decide to do that, and how easy or difficult did you find that to write like that?
Yeah, because Wendy was talking earlier about the benefactors having a kaleidoscope. It's not the term you used, effect. So, but the thing with the kaleidoscope is you can still discern all the individual parts. Whereas The Boy from the Sea is narrated from a we perspective. So it's narrated by the town and some kind of group. I don't think it is the entire town, really, although that's a valid perspective. I suspect it might be the men sitting in the ship inn at the bar, because I think it's male voice, it's older. But it is a group voice. As to whether it was easy or hard, no, it was quite easy. It flowed very well, but then you could simply allow kind of local cadence to take over, and you could lean into the humor much more easily that way. It just kind of flowed kind of nicely. As I mentioned a while ago, it started as a bit of a memoir, so it had that memoirist sort of voice. And you would talk like that in a memoir quite easily. Rather than just speaking for yourself, you could speak for your community. You could say, in our day, we did this, we did that. You could just speak in a we voice. And it's a bit presumptuous, but you could do it. It would flow perfectly well. So it flowed well, and it brought lots of advantages. It helped me lean into the humor. I also needed a voice, needed to be independent of the characters, because it had to be a little bit more emotionally intelligent than the characters. Because most of the characters, especially the men, have no idea what's driving them at any point. So you needed a voice that was able to put some perspective on it, and the voice helped with that as well. But I also wanted one that was grounded in the place and could be invested in the place, and especially invested in the Bonners, and especially interested in Brendan Bonner, the boy from the sea, and just care about him. So all of that helped I was able to do all of that by rooting it in the community and having a group speak like that. And And as soon as I started writing that way, I knew I'd found it. It just started to flow from that point.
Anyone else?
Thank you. I'd love to know just how you know when you've actually finished your novel and can set it down. And then just maybe finally, just to let us know what you're thinking about next and how quickly you start to flood with new ideas. Thank you.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Well, there's one way in which the things are never finished, in the sense that whenever I was reading the audiobook, I would come across some parts that I was pleased with, but also as well some places where I was thinking, oh, I wish I'd put that the other way around, or I wish I'd phrased that syntax, whatever, slightly differently. But I suppose you just know. It's one of those, like, I suppose so much about writing is just feel. And it's sometimes not a very satisfactory answer for people, because it's just, you just know. It's the same as if you go out for a night with someone and you know the night has come to its natural end, that you've got nothing more that you want to say. Whether there's other people and you know it could continue for another few hours, it's just a feel that you know that's about as good as you can do for now. At present, I started to work on a new novel, so I've got that underway. I got a couple of film scripts that I'm working on too. So that is me. Yeah. So my new novel's got a bit in Dubai, so that's a bit of a departure for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with Wendy about the feel. Although there are ways I verify the feel. So through a complex system of scraps of paper and dice or whatever, you're looking at random paragraphs or random pages and just sort of checking them, and you're going through them all, but in a mixed up order. And once you're able to do that a couple of times, and you don't want to change anything, then you're kind of done. Reading it backwards as well, so go page by page backwards. So you're not getting caught up in the narrative flow, and you're able to address things from as neutral a perspective as you can manage, and you still don't want to change anything. So that's a good sign. That probably means it's done. Yeah. And what am I? Yeah, I'm writing something else also set in Donegal, back in Donegal.
Dubai and Donegal there.
No,
perfect.
No Dubai.
Perfect. Anything else? Well, oh, yeah, we've one more. Yep.
This is to both of you. You were talking about the lack of funding for writing and things like that. But yet you only have to look around this room, the amount of books. And what is it about Northern Ireland, do you think, that produces so many writers, despite being the little person of the publishing world? Do you think, is it rooted in our oral storytelling tradition? Is it in our DNA, or what is it? Why are we so prolific, despite maybe only having the population of the average city in the rest of the UK? There.
No, it's so fun, isn't it? I don't. Yeah. Well, you see, maybe it's partly because the other options aren't so. Maybe it's hard to do anything else. You know. So maybe that it's got to be something to do with cultural inheritance, then, doesn't it? It means writing is not a remote kind of thing. Like, look at all your students are looking at Wendy every day. I mean, it must. So writers aren't these distant figures, so it's just part of the scene. And it must be a kind of cultural inheritance. That aspect must be playing into it as well. And you're talking about the storytelling kind of tradition. That's true as well. And really, I mean, what I would often say to students is really, if you can tell a story in a pub to your friends and hold them, and if you have a sense of pace, how to draw the laugh where you want the laugh to be, then you've got good instincts to start writing. And you see people in pubs every evening showing really good storytelling talent. So yeah, it's probably got something to do with that kind of training also. Yeah,
you're nodding along, Wendy, aren't you?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I just think telling stories is your natural mode. I mean, you know, the short story isn't some sort of rarefied form. You meet somebody for a coffee or a drink, and you essentially trade little short stories with each other. I think there's all sorts of things. I mean, I think that, like, say you take a bookshop like No Alibis, the effect that that has on a group of people. You think about the Seamus Heaney Centre. You think about, you know, people seeing other people having success and people being interested in what they do. There's all of that. But there's also, as well, I suppose, that what we're looking at here are books that have been published, and there's also the fact that maybe the world of the sort of commercial world, the world of publishing, has become more interested in here, and has maybe got a more sophisticated, or moving towards a more sophisticated sense of what stories, the potential of stories from here, beyond the sort of very narrow range that there might have been before.
Any other takers? No, that's true. Well, look, thank you all so much for coming out. It's been great. Thanks especially to you two, because it's been lovely hearing from both of you, just having a chat about books and your craft. And to take the time out to chat to a few of us has been great. Wendy, Erskine, thank you so much. Garrett, Carr as well, thank you. Thank you very much.